City parks are busy places. Lots of people and not much space. On a sunny afternoon, there's little freedom and even less adventure. Exciting places in towns very soon become blocks of flats, with their concrete balconies and their endless rows of windows. In summer, a town's horizons seem to be very near, especially if you have ever had a longing to walk in the hills, or to go sailing, or to test yourself just a little more than city life permits. But there are alternatives to the closeness of office blocks and the noise of busy streets and throngs of people and traffic. Especially if you're young and looking for something different and exciting. Mallaig is the end of the road to the Isles, a fishing port in the northwest of Scotland. It is a kind of frontier town where road and rail stop, and travel from here on is by boat or on foot. The fishing boats and trawlers leave here for the Atlantic and the North Sea. The ferries head for Skye and the Outer Isles. But these boys are traveling up to the head of Loch Nevis, to Camusrory, and the beginning of their adventures. As soon as the boys are all on board, the launch is off, carrying not only them, but all the supplies for Camusrory. Their ferry is the Jacobite, and if they miss that, it is a 15-mile hike over the hills, for there are no roads where they are going. The trip on the Jacobite takes 2 hours in fine weather, and the waters of Loch Nevis are the only highway. Behind them, the boys are leaving what most of us are accustomed to spend at least 2 weeks in some of the wildest and most rugged country in Britain. So wild and so rugged that at the outset it gives even the boldest pause for thought. Camusrory is the base camp for the Traveller's Trust. Here basic training takes place, and from here the expeditions set out. It was once a croft, but now the boys and girls who arrive here will find a modern, comfortable house with all the facilities and equipment necessary for fitting out the various projects. There is plenty to be done, and everyone is eager to get ashore. Everything and everyone is piled into a rubber dinghy with an outboard motor. This is the last mechanized transport they are going to use for some time. This is the type of country through which the boys and girls are going to travel on expeditions which they will plan and map out for themselves, with expert advice. The Travelers' Trust organizes 3 types of expedition: on horseback, by canoe, or by sail. And whether they choose to ride, canoe, or sail, the scope and outcome of each journey depends on the efforts of the youngsters themselves. Most people have never traveled in country like this before, which is no disadvantage. But it can be wild and rough, and whoever comes must look forward to a strenuous, if exciting, time. Camusrory is the base camp, and once the elementary rules of survival have been understood, the parties set off to learn as they go along how to make a success of living without most of those things which we have come to consider essential to everyday life. In this country, by far the most efficient way to travel is on horseback. And the land parties from Camusrory ride these horses, animals, perfectly at home here. The horses may know the country, the boys don't. In fact, a lot of youngsters don't even know horses, since many have never ridden before in their lives. But don't let this be a deterrent, for there is plenty of instruction in how to handle and care for the mounts. By feeding, saddling, grooming. Horse and rider must get to know one another, for they are going to be dependent on each other for at least a fortnight. They may look alarming if you're not used to them, but these horses are at ease with even the most inexperienced rider. Aye, but learning to sit a horse properly is only half the battle. The next step is to learn the business of reading a map. For these expeditions are not just short jaunts up a hillside and down, but treks in the real sense. The riders may well travel upwards of 300 miles from the Atlantic to the North Sea, along a route which they themselves have planned and for which they have arranged supplies. They're going to trek up valleys and cross moors and scale mountains without any of the familiar landmarks, so they must learn to read maps and use compasses. And they'll be sleeping out in the hills, so at Camusrory they'll learn to pitch tents and cook in the open. In fact, the youngsters are given the working knowledge necessary to ensure their own survival. Perhaps traveling on horseback may seem the obvious way to explore these Western Highlands, but another equally exhilarating form of transport is in a canoe. At first sight, this may seem even more daunting than riding on a horse, and most young people are completely unfamiliar with canoes. But with a little help, they soon learn to handle the 2-man canoes which will take them and the tents and supplies on their journey. From the initial frightening instability of being so close to the water in an apparently fragile craft, confidence grows, especially when they learn how to rescue themselves or others should they capsize. The first ducking is always the worst. In a short afternoon, these two have already struck up a good, strong partnership. Just as well, they'll be paddling maybe 18 miles a day. Safety is paramount at Camusrory, so for the first few days, the boys get to know their new environment and gain confidence in themselves in handling emergencies. The sailors will journey on Pioneer, a 26-foot, 6-ton Bermudan rigged sloop. With a crew of 5 and an instructor, she will be heading west to the Hebrides, perhaps, but not before her crew has had good training in sail drill and seamanship in the quiet waters by Camusrory. But as soon as they are ready and able to handle Pioneer efficiently, and with stores aboard, the boys are anxious to get underway and head for the open sea to the west. By nightfall, Pioneer may be anchored in the Sound of Sleat, well on our way to Lewis or Cape Wrath, on the northernmost tip of Scotland. Or her crew may have decided to take her west, past Eigg and Rum, to South Uist, and a voyage round the Atlantic coast of the Outer Hebrides. It is an exciting prospect for her crew, amazing to some who only a few days before were living in the heart of the city. At a more sedate pace behind Pioneer, the canoeing expedition has set off west along the shores of Loch Nevis, heading eventually for destinations like Ardnamurchan or the Small Isles. 150 miles is a long way in a canoe. Behind them they leave Scornakish, the mountain that dominates Camusrory and the head of Loch Nevis. And as they paddle, there is plenty to see once aching muscles are forgotten. One of the aims of these expeditions is that they should be planned on very flexible lines, so that there is plenty of opportunity for mountain climbing and exploration. Specific projects are also planned by the travelers so that they can investigate the geology of the Western Highlands, or its wildlife, or whatever takes their fancy. But last to leave, with no doubt the furthest to go, are the horsemen. As they climb up and away from Camusrory, they turn east on the first leg of their journey. By tonight they will have crossed the neck of Knoydart to camp at the head of Loch Owen. This is not just a picturesque outing on a sunny summer afternoon. It is a long, rough ride over all kinds of terrain, and the weather is not always as fair as it is today. But this is all part of the challenge which the Traveller's Trust provides. Riding is thirsty work and tiring for horses as well as boys. A rest is welcome, and it also gives everyone a chance to make sure that they know their whereabouts on the map and to check that they are making good time. A few minutes' peace to enjoy the scenery and pet the horses, and then they're off on their way again. Kinlochon, and the end of the first day's journey. And now there is the business of making camp. One of the horses needs shoeing. And the smith is there, ready to do his work at the farmhouse near the campsite. Provisions for horses and boys, brought by van, 80-mile drive, the long way around, by one of the instructors who assist the treks. The food is divided up. Everyone gets their share. Eggs, bacon, and beans for the boys. Aye, and cubes for the horses. So the end of the first day, over 20 miles from Camusrory, and nobody will staying up late tonight. Breakfast. Waiting under canvas and cooking in the open is still a new experience, but they're all up early and doing the morning chores. But there is no time to hang about. As soon as they have eaten, all the gear has to be repacked, and preparations have to be made to strike camp. With their equipment taken care of, full attention is now turned to the horses. This is no chore, for the boys already seem to be at ease with the horses, and fond of them too. And they've got to treat them well, for they are the only form of transport which is going to carry them 300 miles over the highlands. The horses are groomed, saddles, bridles laid out for inspection, and everything is made ready for the day's ride. Then it's just a matter of saddling up. And as they ride away into what for these youngsters is wild and unknown country, these words of Robert Louis Stevenson sum up the essence of the traveller's trust endeavour. For my part, I travel not to go anywhere, but to go. I travel for travel's sake. The great affair is to move, to feel the needs and hitches of our life more nearly, to come down off the feather bed of civilization and find the globe granite underfoot and strewn with cutting flints.